What's going on, Chill Army? DeAndreX7 here, and a couple weeks ago, I went over my favorite Pokemon of every single Pokemon type. So I thought it was appropriate that I make a video of the opposite of that. My least favorite Pokemon of every single Pokemon type. Now, going over the quick disclaimers real quick, disclaimers. Well, first off, these are all my opinions, and second of all, I don't exactly... Just because I say they're my least favorite doesn't mean I actually hate them. These just happen to be the Pokemon of those types that I like least. Because I typically like most Pokemon. And one more thing, if a Pokemon is dual typed and let's say, I don't know, I choose Skarmory as my least favorite flying type, it won't show up again as my least favorite steel type, basically. So with that, let's get started with my least favorite normal type, Greedent. Squavit doesn't bother me at all, but Greedent has a profoundly unsettling yet subtle unpleasantness. I find it upsetting because I really want to like them because I love rodents. Typically, I prefer, the quote-unquote ugly Pokemon designs because they are more imaginative than the ones that are easily marketed. However, Greedent genuinely pulls off an unattractive, ugly look. It's almost adorable, but the nuances of the way it looks in the end strike me as oddly unwholesome. Overall, Greedent is not only my least favorite Pokemon of the normal type, but also my least favorite Pokemon of the early root mammals. I would essentially capture it for the Pokedex and simply forget about it. Pachirisu and Emolga continue to be the best squirrel-looking Pokemon, while Diggersby and Gumshoos are much better at having the ugly, goofy appearance. My least favorite Pokemon of the fighting type is Primeape. The majority of the time, these original examples of a Pokemon's type have unintentionally evolved into the type's quote-unquote mascot. For Mankey, I think this isn't the case. I've observed that the Hitmons and the Machop family have received significantly more attention for being the Gen 1 fighting type mascots. Mankey is simply bizarre and not in ways that have helped it gain a large following. Mankey is also a Pokemon that barely changes at all when it evolves. It actually gets angrier, develops shackle-like bands on its limbs, and loses its tail entirely, which may explain why it's so furious in the first place. Although the pig monkeys aren't the most unique or memorable Pokemon, Annihilape at least keeps them from being completely uninteresting to me. My least favorite Pokemon of the flying type is Squawkabilly. Paldea gave us so many magnificent bird Pokemon before giving us this boring design. The groovy Quaquaval in particular is one of the best. The Wattrel line offers an intriguing perspective on seabirds because it uses the electric typing to allude to the fact that petrels and frigid birds will attack other seabirds, which are usually portrayed as water types and thus 4 times weak to the electric and flying type, Wattrel and Kilowattrel. One of the Titans, Bombardier, alludes to the fact that storks can be dangerous in the actual world. Because of its extreme absurdity and partial inspiration from a lawn ornament, Flamigo is able to carry off the "it's just a blank" design. Squawkabilly has none of this. All it has going for it is the fact that it comes in 4 different colors and replaced Corviknight as the taxi service because of Tinkaton. If you like Squawkabilly and or parrots in general, I believe you deserve a little more, and they might have been even better off giving Chatot numerous regional evolutions or something. Unfortunately, this Pokemon does not evolve at all. Fans of Squawkabilly, I'm sorry. My least favorite Pokemon of the poison type is Amoonguss. It's sad that I've come to the conclusion that I don't like Amoonguss as much as I do Foongus, which is adorable, but oh well. It remains a solid fungus Pokemon. Generation 5, in my opinion, was excellent for giving us a proper mushroom Pokemon, if nothing else. Of course, I appreciate the concepts behind Breloom and Parasect, but at this point, a simple mushroom creature felt sadly lacking from the Pokedex. But in any case, the style is excellent. Although it may not be the most elegant method to achieve the Mimic Mushroom look, I'll take it. My least favorite Pokemon of the ground type is Dugtrio, specifically the Alolan version of Dugtrio. Alolan Diglett wasn't my favorite, with the idea of taking Diglett and making absolutely no changes while still being referred to as a different form. Being a useless and pointless form, Alolan Dugtrio does the same to a Pokemon that I already don't really like that much. Alolan Dugtrio's metal headpieces are objectively designed to resemble human hair in a way that looks stupid and makes absolutely no goddamn sense, in contrast to Alolan Diglett's hair strands, which are somewhat sensible and mainly unobtrusive. Yes, I am aware that the hairs on Alolan Dugtrio's heads are meant to be volcanic metal shavings, but there is no explanation for why they would be so wig-like on a mole without human grooming. My least favorite Pokemon of the bug type is actually two Pokemon, Volbeat and Illumise. Now, yes, I know this kind of breaks my rules of only picking one Pokemon, but this is the only time I'll have two Pokemon as my least favorite of a type in this entire video. I'm only doing this because, let's be real, Volbeat and Illumise are practically the same Pokemon. These two are more similar to the two Nidoran because they represent a gender variation within what is essentially the same species. Similar to the Nidorans, gender variation wasn't really a thing until Generation 4, hence it is weird that they are recognized as separate species in the Pokedex. Nevertheless, the sole and original Firefly Pokemon are these bug types. One may anticipate a Firefly-inspired Pokemon to have either a bug and electric typing due to the fact that, in some parts of the US, Fireflies are called lightning bugs, or take the literal approach and make a bug and fire combination for a Firefly. Perhaps Game Freak thought it was too obvious, but instead of choosing to take a new course of action, nothing was done at all. I won't lie, I find Fireflies to be really cool. I'm sorry to admit that I don't feel particularly positive about Pokemon's so far only Firefly Pokemon, and Volbeat is the one that has my criticism the most. Simply said, I had a hard time seeing any appealing aspects of this design. It was partially inspired by greasers, according to Bulbapedia. That sounds a little improbable in my opinion. Volbeat certainly doesn't convince me of anything of the means, but I'm not sure how that fits into being a Firefly all that much either. I just don't get Volbeat. The most of my issues about Illumise are the same as those I have about Volbeat, although I think it at least passes far better than Volbeat does. It appears nicer. Additionally, Illumise's bobbed hair theme that it has going on with its design has a flapper vibe to it. Illumise, according to the Pokedex, emits pheromones that draw in swarms of Volbeat and give it the ability to control them, causing them to take on shapes in the sky. I think that's kind of cool. Objectively speaking, they're not as bad as I'm portraying them to be, but I had hoped for a little bit more from a Firefly-inspired Pokemon. My least favorite Pokemon of the Ghost type is Hoopa, specifically the confined form. Yeah, I don't like this little Jin. It has a somewhat distinctive personality for yet another mythical Pokemon, a joyful trickster mentality. Simply put, it seems a little cheap and out of place to me, which I suppose is the objective, given that this thing is frequently shown as some sort of agent of chaos by opening portals with its gold rings. But simply said, it looks like a weird McDonald's toy or something, which doesn't do anything to promote the whole mythical thing to me, so I guess that's why I don't really like it all that much. My least favorite Pokemon of the Steel type is Lucario. Given that I regarded Lucario as one of my all-time favorites back when Generation 4 was still significant, it is definitely strange to think about my perspective of the Pokemon. In the present day, the list doesn't even include Lucario. The series' flaw-filled high point is Lucario. The fact that the Pokemon is one of the most well-known is the highlight. Not that I like it. Even if I've previously critiqued popular Pokemon, it's clear why people are drawn to Charizard or Greninja. To be completely honest, I'm not really sure what I saw in Lucario back in the day. The design of Lucario is quite erratic, to say the least. Why are there spikes? Most people agree that's where the steel portion of its typing originates, but that doesn't really stop it from seeming a little odd. Even though the dreads are poorly done, I don't mind them. Additionally, the Sora pants look really absurd. Additionally, Lucario is just an uncomfortable humanoid in general. I'm left wondering why I still sort of like this thing when Lucario is just completely covered from head to toe in such a lack of focus. I can't bring myself to declare I really despise it because it was once a favorite of mine when I was younger. Perhaps this is the only explanation, but if you want to know what I truly think of Lucario, so basically, long story short, while I do enjoy it enough to classify it as a guilty pleasure, there are so many things that prevent it from being viewed fairly that I'm unable to give it a pass. My least favorite Pokemon of the fire type is Volcanion. It's attached strange, Mew, Celebi, Deoxys, Arceus, Genesect. Those are a few examples of the generally fantastic, epic, or otherwise awesome mythical Pokemon. Volcanion just kind of exists. Volcanion could have easily coexisted with other Pokemon as a regular species, and I doubt anyone would have objected. The only actual benefit of Volcanion is that it is the first and only water type Pokemon to date, portraying it as a monster fueled by steam, which in all honesty seems to be the main reason it was given particular treatment. The typing seems a little pointless for this very unoriginal four-legged creature. It appears that they simply ran out of time before they could truly get something rolling, and even if you're not as particular as I am about what deserves the mythical designation, the design is still respectable enough that I can imagine people appreciating it. With the huge steam shooting arms on top, it at least has a distinctive form and silhouette to make it recognizable. The water type was honestly the hardest one since I typically love almost every single water type, because water is my second favorite typing behind electric. I came to the conclusion that my least favorite water type is Dugong. Possibly the most average Pokemon there is Dugong. Not terrible, but a far way from fantastic. Although I can completely understand why someone may find Seal appealing, there aren't any qualities about them that particularly impress me. That's unfortunate because Harp Seals are adorable. Dugong changes the silly appearance into something a little more refined. It works fairly well, but this Pokemon isn't getting much better as a result. Despite the fact that these seals are adorable, I find it difficult to appreciate them due to their poor designs. My least favorite Pokemon of the grass type is Eldegoss. Gossifleur is a good addition to the standard grass type that each generation gets, which is usually some kind of flower girl. It's really cutely designed to resemble a woman with long flowing red hair. More eye-catching in my opinion than some of the totally humanoid flower creatures we've already seen. Eldegoss evolves from Gossifleur, and the motif here is simply aging. It appears young at first, then evolves into a sage little grandmother. The idea is pretty sweet. Unfortunately, I feel that this design is somewhat forgettable as a whole. Eldegoss is a bit simple and unremarkable for a grass type. Perhaps if it were older and more colored in an autumn theme, I might have liked it more. This one was really painful since the electric type is my favorite typing, but I've boiled it down and Pachirisu is my least favorite electric type Pokemon. Yeah, in the context of, even in the standards of Pikachu clones, this one is a little disappointing. I have a soft spot for Pachirisu because I enjoy both rodents and electric type Pokemon. Again, electric is my favorite type, but I'm not going to sit here and pretend that it's more significant than it is. It's merely a blatant Pikachu knockoff. The lack of anything unique about this Pokemon is really my main issue here. You know, compared to all the other Pikachu clones, Pichu is a baby Pokemon from Generation 2, you know, the generation that introduced the concept of baby Pokemon. Generation 3's double battles are represented by +1 Minun. The first dual-type Pikachu clone is Emolga. The Dene embodies the brand new fairy typing of Generation 6, and the list goes on. Pachirisu is just sadly here, existing. If only more was done with this Pokemon. My least favorite Pokemon of the Psychic type is Mr. Mime. Mr. Mime, oh my. What a strange Pokemon you are. I've spoken about the Uncanny Valley before, but Mr. Mime is frequently the Pokemon that comes to mind when the conversation turns to video games. Although Mr. Mime is not inherently a horrible design, I'm not sure how well it blends in with our birds, our snakes, our seals, our crabs, or even our living Pokeballs. Although I wouldn't argue Mr. Mime belongs in Pokemon outright, it always makes me feel uncomfortable to think that one of the many Pokemon is this creature. Simply put, I'm not sure how to feel about it. I can't say I like it, but I also can't say I really hate it. My least favorite Pokemon of the Ice type is Jynx. In terms of design, Jynx is without a doubt the most controversial Pokemon from Generation 1. Let me just get this out of the way and keep it short. It's just challenging to examine Jynx's design and its background without running into it. But in essence, Jynx's original design sadly resembled Blackface quite a little, and as a result of that criticism, Jynx has turned purple. Speaking as a black man, I will not comment on Jynx's appropriateness. Just for me personally, it's not the ideal solution, but based on what little I've seen, Jynx has largely earned the fandom's forgiveness. Although many people try to defend the original design in some manner, it always seems to me to be an aesthetic decision that they simply weren't aware was offensive to a certain group of people. They later attempted to minimize the damage when they discovered what had happened. In any event, I believe I ought to discuss my thoughts on Jynx now. Even setting aside everything mentioned before, I have to admit that I'm not a fan of this Pokemon either. It has some positive qualities, but just like Mr. Mime before it, it has an uncomfortable human appearance. It's that annoying uncanny valley I alluded about earlier. Some elements would be excellent in my opinion if they were executed more effectively elsewhere, especially the face. It's a decent design. However, I find that Generation 1 Pokemon that seem uncomfortably close to humans don't really appeal to me. The Dragon type was a pretty difficult one because I typically like all of their designs, but if I really had to pick my least favorite, probably Dragalge. I don't know, does anyone feel as though Dragalge's design wasn't truly pursued with a clear purpose? Yes, the name is smart, and the typing of Dragon and Poison works well, but it's pretty much a disaster to me. Dragalge is bustling with activity, yet None of it truly ties everything together to make any kind of sense or function at all. It's simply kind of a letdown to me considering how much potential it had. My least favorite Pokemon of the Dark type is Alolan Persian. Sorry, but this is an atrocity in my opinion, and I do not mean that in a nice way. I always thought Persian was a really cool Generation 1 Pokemon. Wasn't a favorite, but I thought it was cool. So I was extremely interested to see how they would develop the Alolan form. I imagined it as a sleeker, more savage form, or maybe a regal psychic and dark type with more focus on the enigmatic jewel, the head jewel that it has. But instead, we get the same damned thing in a gray color with an oddly shaped, poorly drawn skull. Alolan Persian's primary flaw, in my opinion, is that, a lot of people say, oh, it's supposed to look like that, it's supposed to be like a fat, spoiled cat, but to me it doesn't fit the stereotype of a spoiled, rotten, fat cat at all. Sure, it has a cartoonishly large head, but that head is attached to a normally thin Persian body. It almost seems like they just gave up after the head, and that's it. Ending this off, we have my least favorite fairy type, Aromatisse. Before Pokemon X and Y's debut, a number of designs were revealed to players. These included some of the new fairy types. Many people thought that Spritzy, which had an intriguing bird-like design, resembled a kind of plague doctor. This led to several interesting fan-made evolutions for it that played off of its fairy type aspect very well. Its final version was something. The evolved form of Spritzy, Aromatisse, appears to have given up on whatever made it a cute or engaging Pokemon. Even though it has a distinctive design, it isn't really attractive, to say the least. It has strange horns, and then its body is just difficult to describe. Even though it appears fluffy, why does it have to be a can-can dancer? It could have been a flamingo, it could have been a plague doctor, but no, we have a freaking can-can dancer. I don't know. I guess, in short, the franchise's biggest example of unrealized potential is Aromatisse. And those are my least favorite Pokemon of every single Pokemon type. I really hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you guys enjoyed, make sure you guys leave a like. Comment down below, what are your least favorite Pokemon of every single type? Also, share this video with a friend and subscribe if you're new, all that YouTube stuff. And until then, I love you all and I'll see you guys on the next video. Only good, Chill Army.